Okay. All right, if anyone's been trying to listen online, we've had sound issues and our IT staff have worked on them. And we hope you can hear us now. So we'll resume, and I think we left off, Rob, you were speaking at that point. If you want to,
Do you want to repeat that, or do you recall me speaking
Yeah, through your worship, I think you were trying to mention that maybe the cleaning staff, could do things a little differently where they did go after everything. And I mean, this is why we're sitting and having this sort of committee of the whole. If you guys want things changed, how you want things changed, then that's how things go. That's why we're here to talk. If you want the cleaner there to even do some sort of brief look over after every rental, then that's something, just the cost would go up in the services, 700 account. I mean, and there's anyways.
Sherry, go ahead, and then Chris.
I'm just wondering if you could let us know approximately how much it would cost the cleaner to go, like, each visit, compared to how much the fees are. I don't even know how much the fees are at the different facilities, if it's all the same or different.
Yeah, through your worship, it sounds like maybe something that I want to put together for the next council meeting. Kind of a thought, maybe bounce that question off of that cleaner. And maybe look at expenses and costs for each hall, maybe, cleaning from the past. Well, we won't look at the COVID years, that's for sure, but try to, gather just what those costs are. Yeah, I can build a report so that people have some idea of what they're grasping, right? So.
Chris Lee? Okay. Anyone else? Doug, go ahead.
Jake, I was just going down and looking at 2.2 where we listed the 4 halls. And we touched on it earlier about whether each hall should be looked at differently. I believe you should at least take an individual look at each hall. And the reason I say that is that I believe that each hall meets certain needs, and they don't all meet the same need. So that may require that different circumstances. For example, the Enterprise Hall is a bigger hall than, say, this hall, So I think we should just take a look at each hall and the usage of each hall and then see if it's may not be, but there may be an item or two that is dealt with differently at a certain hall. That was just one thought.
Go ahead, Linda.
I think Doug, right at the very end, 16.16, it's policies unique to each facility.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he just needs to expand on that number. Would that be what you're thinking? Because he has listed something with Centerville and something with Enterprise, but maybe just elaborate a little more on that item. I really like what Councillor Fenwick has said about minimum cleaning, and I look forward to seeing your report. I think particularly the washrooms, because I know if you're renting for, even if it's for a euchre game, you can get a lot of people in there. And I understand he is cleaning after the euchre game, but then if you had a smaller activity, the washrooms are still being used, maybe not at the same sort of volume, but I've been to facilities where that is lacking, and it's very evident as soon as you walk into the washroom that there needs to be more cleaning for that. Even if it's just changing the garbage bags in the waste receptors and making sure there's paper towels and just basic stuff like that. And I like the quick inspection idea. I know where I work we have a form, and it's not done every day, but it is done on a regular basis where you go. It's occupational health and safety, where you go around and you make sure that the doors are locking properly and unlocking properly, and that the light switches are all turning on and off, and just little basic things like that to make sure that so it doesn't have to be done every single time, but the basic occupational health and safety checks of the facility is something that could be done, at least we do it monthly, but I mean, that's really whatever you would think would be best to capture some of the things that Councillor Fenwick has talked about. I'm wondering about sorry, can I go on?
Certainly.
All right. 9.2, I really like what you've done here in this policy. Overall, I really like it. I like that you've talked about the 9.1 first come, first serve. And I like that you put in 9.2, which is the users that rent a facility weekly or monthly may be asked in special circumstances to accommodate requests for facility rental scheduling. I like that statement. It's soft, but it's clear to the regular user that, somebody may come to them at some point in time and say, would you mind? I know you've got it booked, but this date works really best for my Jack and Jill or whatever. So that statement is, I hope it's going to resolve any issues that you might have experienced over the past in that regard. And there's just one spelling mistake, but I'll send that to you by email. All right, thank you.
Crystal?
Yeah, so we have the cleaners that often do, like you said, neighbor call. I would assume that the schedule that they have, they view as being adequate. Maybe I'm incorrect. Do we often receive complaints about halls being not clean for other users? Is that a regular occurrence?
I've received complaints from the Lions Club in the past that the neighbor hall wasn't adequately cleaned. I wouldn't say that I'm inundated with complaints about it. The same contractor I've had actually compliments on the cleaning at the Tamworth Hall. And remember, the Tamworth Hall is a library that's open 5 days a week, so he goes there maybe only once a week to clean for the library, and that's just another whole kettle of fish to open. Is he going? It's got a librarian there. I don't know if we need damage deposits or, you know what I mean? Like maybe he would go there after a rental. There is a regular user. There's a Euchre group there every Friday afternoons, but the Tamworth Hall I don't know if council's been in it. It's, in my view, in my time here, slowly being transformed less and less into a community hall and just more and more into a library. I mean, it might be on the list with the Centerville Hall as being a hall that just isn't rented anymore because, I mean, for instance, I know that Public Works Manager Thompson had kind of an open house there recently to discuss the Peel Street. He was on the phone with me, and like, there's just books everywhere. There's no reason there's nowhere to even hardly sit and talk, right? And I think he just moved some bookshelves here and there. The bookshelf population has been growing there over my term here, so it's kind of not really a building that you'd maybe want to. For instance, when I first started, there was not just euchre groups there. There was kind of knitting groups, quilting groups, and yoga going on there once a week and stuff like that. And I just think that if you were there today looking, you'd probably not see where you could do yoga there anymore. So anyways, I'm just that's something that maybe just as a committee of the whole we want to talk about that I didn't really put in this report. But yeah, in regards to, I forget, Wenda, there was one point that you mentioned there that I was going to get into, but yeah.
The health and safety.
Yeah, we do health and safety, obviously, in all of our buildings.
Okay, good.
I don't know if it's monthly or bi-monthly, and I'm not on the health and safety committee.
Did you want to put that in the policy?
I don't think that needs to go in this policy. I think there's probably a policy somewhere else for that. So.
Okay.
Wendy?
Yes, down at
15.1. Make sure I got the right number, yes. Regarding the food, renters will be responsible for submitting a special event application to the KFLNA House Unit should the food being served at their event require such approval. Please contact the KFLNA official to inquire whether approved for your event will be necessary. My understanding dealing with food is anyone using the kitchen really needs to have a you need to be a certified food handler. There should be at least one person at the event at all times. I mean, I wouldn't want to go to an event if there were no certified food handlers. You can be certified through the the health unit. You can do it online, or you can go in and do a course. It's a 2-day, 4-hour course. And there's probably, like I've been certified twice myself, and once you're certified, you never lose that certification. So I know there's a lot of people in this community that are certified, because in my past experience, we've had certification courses with 30 and 40 people attending. But a recommendation I would have is to maybe change that wording a little bit, that through the KFLNA, you do a certified food handler, and they must be on the premises anytime food is being served. Even here, when we have food here, there should be a certified food person. And that should be included in the health and safety, which it may be. So I'm not really sure of all the proceedings that go on, but maybe if you're doing up an agreement, I would recommend that a certified food handler be included in that, if anyone's using food.
Yeah, great topic to talk about, Wendy. My plan was that in an application form that you would sign, before you were able to rent this facility, I would lay that out better, because I mean, my plan, I don't think too many people in the public are going to read a 6-page, policy. They'll get lost on page 2 and they won't read it all. And so you'll get the really important spot on an application form in like bold lettering, and you'll kind of lay out the rules around food serving at this facility as best as we know it. So I actually reached out to Tim Barney, KFLNA food official, before I wrote this. And because, I mean, it wasn't really that clear to me before I wrote this. So I did a little research, and I just happened to be kind of talking to him because he was actually in certifying, or we had a scheduled inspection that didn't work out. But all of our facilities, for those that don't know, because I don't think people know that, are all certified as a food operating kitchen, right? So they have to come look at it. They count sinks. They just make sure that the place is clean generally, right? And that, hot water is available, stuff like that. So here's the rules as he laid them out. 1, if it's a private event, meaning that's just a birthday party, it's an invite only, then you don't need any kind of special event application form. You don't need any kind of certification from KFLNA for a private event at any of our halls. 2, if it's a public event and everything you're serving was cooked in one of our approved kitchens, then you don't need a handler, but it is certified. So the reason that could draw you into needing one is if you're bringing food into the hall from an outside source that's not a certified caterer, like a certified handler or caterer. Like all the catering that you would get would generally be certified, I would hope. But for instance, I know of a situation that happened in a municipality not that long ago where they did it's a potluck, right? It's a public event and it's a potluck. That's where you could need a actual event application from KFLNA approved. And they would probably come to your event and then look at it. A potluck from home, where you're bringing food from home for a public event. And a public event where you're advertising it on Facebook, whether that is a Halloween dance, whether that is Jack and Jill that the public, you can buy tickets to, that would all count as a public event. Whereas you can have other parties where it's just like invite only, right? So they would never need any kind of to an invite only party. And that's how it was laid out to me, Councillor McDonald, okay?
Yes, Doug?
Jake, how would we treat the cameras? For example, we don't use the library, we still got the multi-purpose room, and we've got the upstairs. How would we treat them? Should they, upstairs as a canteen, and we're allowing the canteen to be used on occasion? We used to have an outbreak, we don't have, I don't believe we have an outbreak now, but we still have the facility. Should they have their own separate rules for those two rooms, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, through your worship. Yeah, this is a really good question. So they both have their own kitchens, and they both are inspected by KFLA in the same way. Up until recently, the banquet hall, like I can't remember it ever being rented like it is in the past few weeks. It was always available for like a dance. I don't remember the only dances or events that I've ever been a part of at that banquet hall was hockey related. After a hockey game, women's hockey, having a dance, that sort of thing. But certainly it was always available for rent. And I think you could always book it, and it has been booked in the past few weeks. And the same with the multi-purpose room. Generally speaking, we've rented it out. It's got a play group there once a week through LNA County. There's been, the Lions Club meets there however often they meet. It's gun courses, stuff like that have been booked there before. And it is kind of the same. It's just a smaller space, just like a lot of our smaller spaces. But I think we should be, you're right, treating this the same way that we're treating the other facilities, correct, Councillor, or not Councillor, Deputy Reeve Davison? Yeah, to my mind, if it isn't included, it was an oversight.
Anyone else? So I had just a thought about the problem of not being able to do an immediate inspection after an event, especially on weekends. What about requiring the user to take photographs? Everybody's got cell phones pretty well these days. I think dates or times can be made to appear on photos, so they can't just take a picture of the before and submit it. So you prescribe what has to be photographed: the main floor, the washroom, the kitchen, everything. You put them out to 10 or a dozen photos. Say, here we've cleaned. Here's what it looks like. Would that be feasible?
Yeah, through your worship, I've read all sorts of different rental policies. I've never came across that. It would be an interesting kind of one that would probably be cheaper and in today's technological world, easily done, and then sent to some email address. So it's an interesting idea. If council was looking to endorse that idea, that's something that definitely could go into certainly I've had back and forth with different people about this. In my mind, you should leave the hall pretty close. I know that if you have a dance and a Jack and Jill, like it's pretty hard to make it look like it did before, but I think that it would, some sort of attempt should be taken. I would, I think that's maybe a good idea. And if one of your, patrons at a Jack and Jill punches a hole in the wall, then hopefully it's caught. I'm open to whatever suggestion. That's what this meeting's all about. So.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it would be too difficult to set up. It's probably worth a try. If you've got prescribed and required photos, you could take photos when the facility's in good shape can provide those, here's the shot that we want. Now, if there's some obscure part of the hall where someone's punched a hole in the wall, they aren't gonna take a photo of that. Those are the anomalies, right? But
Yeah.
look at, in general, what we're interested in. I would suggest it be something we're trying to, yeah. Anything else that comes to mind for council at this point? Jake, do you have enough to work with to sort of update your draft at this point? Is there anything else you want to hear from council, anything specific that you still are uncertain about or unclear on?
So yeah, if I'm gathering this, maybe that is an idea that you want to put into the draft of the bylaw about the picture taking. B, maybe we want to have, if I'm understanding this clearly, we want to have a deposit now on cleanliness so that we can keep that money and put it toward fixing something or, paying the cleaner to clean extra after a renter that didn't clean up very well. And see, we want to have more oversight, maybe potentially another report to council on kind of the cost of cleaning and the cost of having a cleaner go after every rental. Is that's kind of what I gathered from this meeting?
I think so. Anything that's been mentioned that Jake has missed in that summation, Sherry?
I can't find it right off, but did I read somewhere that the renter is responsible for taking their own garbage out?
Through your worship, yeah, that's a long-standing. We used to have a spot in Newburgh. People started to put their own garbage in there, and it just turned into. I think it's a good policy that if you're in a perfect world, your event wouldn't create a lot of garbage, but ultimately that does happen, and it's been a long-standing policy to take your own garbage home. That is correct.
But would that solve the problem of the bathroom garbage as well? Do we need bathroom garbage as well? So then we would have to go and clean it if the renter has to do it.
So I don't think that taking your garbage home included taking the paper towels home that you wiped your hands on in the washroom. I think the cleaner, generally speaking, takes the dirty paper towel, and I don't think that was meant, but that's something we could actually write physically in a policy.
Just as long as it's clear to everybody else.
Yeah, no, to me, garbage is like the birthday party, garbage that was left over from, the disposable plates that were used, that sort of thing.
Just, I would agree with that, in that, if you come to do a card game, then are you also supposed to, take the card, I just feel like it could be an awkward situation over and over, you just need to play cards, and whose job is it now to empty the washroom garbage rather than your cups, your plates, and that kind of thing. I think leaving it to the cleaner, if reasonable, makes more sense.
Anyone else? Yes, Lynn.
I liked what you were talking about from Tim Barney, the 4 conditions: private events, food prep in the hall, certified food person, bringing your food for a public event, you need a certified food handler. Is that going to be spelled out in the form when somebody fills out a form to have an event? Will that be included? They'll have a clear understanding if they're going to be bringing food in, that they need a certified handler there on site? Or do you think most people know that? I think KFL&A has some postings like that they put up on the halls, don't they? There used to be one like that in Newburgh anyway. It was laminated and it just said, if you're providing food, these conditions have to be met. So maybe it's not necessary to list it on a form if it's already posted. Sorry.
Yeah, through your worship. I'm going to do on the form as best as I can to explain when you need a application to be submitted to KFL&A. In terms of the food handler thing, I'm not you can have events without food handlers. That's what I said in my. You just got to follow the rules. The rules being, if it's a public event, I mean, it's a private event. You don't need anything. You don't need a food handler. You don't need any kind of certificate from, if it's a public event though, and you're bringing food from an uncertified kitchen, like a potluck would be, that is when you need a certificate and you need some oversight from the KFLNA, public health. And that is what I'm going to try to lay out in my application form so that that's kind of clear when you're going. I mean, I think that we've done our due diligence then, because right now I don't think there's anything. And like I said, even I was confused before I started a draft on how that whole process was. So if I can, now that it's clear in my head, kind of write that into an application form so that they're, better informed as for renting our halls, then that's what I'm going to aim for.
This is directed through you to Councillor Fenwick. You brought up at one of our meetings a while ago about a posting about something about photographs, or it was a posting that appeared in Enterprise that hadn't been posted by the township. Do you remember? Do you know what I'm talking about? It was like a something on the wall. It was, and I thought it had to do with.
Oh. Yeah, it was I have a copy of it somewhere, but I just don't have it with me, I apologize. It was where, a group had posted something about, like a social media, policy, but it was named Enterprise Hall does this and that. And that should be up to us to do that sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So do we want to discuss that under this policy? Because it's not in here.
No, I don't know how that would play out in there. It just basically seemed as if somebody had taken, like, basically put up a policy that looked like it was endorsed by the township, but we didn't know anything about it. So I don't know how we would cater to that, or how we would describe that in this particular thing here. I don't have a copy, I apologize.
I think that's something to be dealt with on an ad hoc basis.
I think
It doesn't need to be in a policy. Wendy, I think you had something.
I just wonder, Jake, do you ever have any problems with tables and chairs, not being cleared or stacked back the way they should be? I know it is mentioned under 8.1, use tables and chairs, but, it doesn't really state that they must be clean, stacked, and, replaced to their original location. Do you ever have a problem with going into halls and seeing them all still all set up?
Through your worship, yeah, there is a lot of that's out there. But the two contractors that clean our halls probably could get you more in depth, because I'm just simply the person up here that is responsible for the halls. I'm not actually cleaning and like looking at the halls after the rental. I have pretty limited knowledge of that, but I assume that there are plenty of delinquent hall users who don't put things away the way they're supposed to. If that's what you're asking, I would imagine there's a lot of that. So.
A simple photograph of the chairs stacked on signs, yeah.
That's what they done.
Anything further on the call policy? At this point, we have a mover and seconder to take it on, to put it on the floor. Are all in favor of that? That's carried, thank you. The second item is our procedural bylaw review, which Randy has taken the initiative to prepare a report on. And the motion is the council receive this report, incorporating the directions received from committee of the whole meeting, be prepared and presented at the June 3rd regular council meeting. Can I get that on the floor, please? Crystal Lee and Rob. Randy, when you're ready.
I'm just gonna go up so I can present it to council.
Sure.
Let's go up to here, go. Who is that committee?
Yes,
Three of us.
I was gonna say it's an inside joke, but I get your reference there.
Yeah, we're all over it.
There's some of the changes.
We got motions.
situated here.
Yeah.
Okay. So your worship, members of council, I thought I'd do this through a PowerPoint presentation and just kind of go through all of the items that I had identified in my report. I think this may help streamline the conversation, and then we'll go through all the points, and then we can go back through the procedural bylaw if we missed anything. Is that okay with council? Okay. Okay, so the purpose of the review for tonight is direction was provided by council at the February 5th, 2024 council meeting when the initial procedural bylaw review was brought forward. Under section 238 of the Municipal Act, it stipulates that every municipality and local board is required to pass a procedural bylaw which governs the calling, place, and proceedings of a meeting. The procedural bylaw is also meant to provide public notice of meetings. So the purpose of the review is to ensure that the procedural bylaw meets council requirements and help to maintain transparency, accountability of council decisions, promote public input and awareness of council decisions, improve the efficiencies of meetings, and to ensure that the procedures of council are being followed. So I've broke the presentation down into kind of 3 sections. So the first being housekeeping updates. So this is just general updates to the procedural bylaw. Then we have some recommended changes and then some considerations for council. So we can go through each line here if council wishes. So the first housekeeping item was to remove the reference to the position of CAO clerk position and change to clerk. Under the Municipal Act, it's the clerk's responsibility to be the secretariat for council. So if that position ever changed in the future to CAO clerk again, the procedural bylaw would still be relevant and that language would still be used. So within this new bylaw, we'll have to formally repeal 2020-1014 and any other bylaws that were in effect. Section 2.1, update the information as it relates to where meeting dates and times are posted. The current procedural bylaw states that it's posted to the Civic Web portal, but it's actually in fact posted to the township's website. Under section 3.1, we'll update to have the first meeting after an election held 31 days after the election day. Right now it says that it's held, I believe it is by the first Monday in December. This wouldn't be compliant with the Municipal Act because it has to be within the first 30 days. And the voting day is the fourth Monday, I believe, in October. So waiting till December to hold a meeting, we wouldn't be compliant. Section 3.4. So right now it speaks to adjourning a regular session and then going into closed session. The practice would be to make a motion to go into closed session and then do your rise and report coming out of closed session. That way you don't have to do a separate agenda for coming out of closed. It should just all be in as a standing item in one agenda. 7.1, I thought the language could just be updated to include all persons and not just specific to employees, council members, members of parliament, etc.
And royalty.
And royalty, that's right. And then section 9.1, I'm just going to open my procedural bylaw because I don't know that offhand. So I wasn't sure the intent of past practice for 9.1. It's not the current practice for the audio live streaming is that it is live streamed to YouTube. The video remains up until the minutes are approved at the following meeting. So that can be up for discussion, whether council wants to take it down immediately. If they want to leave it up forever, that's at your discretion.
So why don't we pause and talk about that? Do you have something there, Chris?
It's actually supposed to be for a minimum of 2 weeks. Also, we did make a slight variation. It's supposed to be until the minutes are passed, or at least 2 weeks, just in that we had a special meeting on a Thursday, like it could be passed on a Monday, and then nobody can see the video. But I actually believe they should be left up indefinitely, and I feel like if we were to go ask people in this community, that 9 out of 10 people would say, why do you take them down? And when I've been at Roma, I was asking about this, the videos coming down, and everyone was like, you take your videos down? Why do you take your videos down? Why do you take your videos down? There is a part of me though, as a rookie, where I know sometimes I say something I don't want to be recorded forever. And I'm like, oh, but I still think, again, like the reason we do this is for transparency and accountability. And we also know that there's a growing distrust in government, whether it's at a local level and on up. And so I think we have a responsibility to do whatever we can to try to bridge that sense of distrust that is growing among the public. And I think that's a positive thing that we can do.
Go ahead, Linda.
I love everything that you just said. As well, there is inconsistency because there are some meetings that are still up there and haven't been pulled down. And they're just odd meetings here, there, and everywhere. And so there's a lack of consistency in that. So we either have to leave it up for 2 weeks and take them down, or we just leave them all up. And I'm okay with that.
Rob?
As much as I can see the value in both of those, I kind of like the idea of a hybrid approach. I believe that when the minutes are adopted, that is the official record of the meeting, and that is true. And anything else from that is, and I don't disagree with Councilor Woodcock, there's certainly value in being able to go back and review and settle what's done. My thought is that at the end of 2 weeks, the video comes down from the portal, the minutes become the official record. However, we should keep a copy of it. If someone wishes to access it, then we have the opportunity for freedom of information request, and they are more than welcome to have that. It also allows us to have it to review at any time down the road, but at least there's some sort of a barrier where if they really want it bad enough, they can certainly have access to it. No different than not leaving all of our other documents up for everyone to see forever and ever as well. That's kind of my thinking.
Kristen?
I want to calmly say I strongly disagree, and I don't think we should be putting up blocks to people getting what is ought to be free and open information of a public meeting. It's not the same as leaving our documents, but they're also on Civic Portal. We don't take them down because the public has a right to that information. And I do feel very, very strongly about this, and I think, again, many people in our community too. I don't think there's anyone who'd say, very few people, again, 9 out of 10 people are gonna say, why take them down? And I feel very strongly on the issue. Oh, I'm sorry, one other thing.
Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot, because I know that it's been said before that the minutes are, that's what I meant to say. That the minutes are the official record. So a judge will render a verdict and you can see guilty or not guilty. But what's really important is how did you get to that decision? And the minutes do not tell how we ended up at a decision. And in fact, so many of the votes we don't record. So all you see is something is passed. You don't know who's really in favor, who was against it. You don't know how they got to that question. And unfortunately, before, when we used to have local journalism, we'd have a reporter sitting here in the audience. So you have a great public record, you have the minutes, and you have an article that said, this is what was said, this is what was said, but we don't have journalists covering our local politics anymore. And so that's even why I feel even more important that it is essential that we make these conversations available to the public forever.
So, Doug, go ahead.
I'm passionate about
First thing, I know absolutely nothing about websites. First one was, is there any concern with volume? That's all I'm questioning. Is there an issue with leaving everything up for perpetuity or not? I just don't know that.
So, Brandy?
Through you, Reef-Wise. So our videos are published through YouTube. So I'm not aware of any capacity of how many videos we can post to YouTube. I can certainly look into that. I know it's a cloud-based, so I would assume that you could post as many and leave them up as much as you wanted. But the videos that do get taken down, they aren't deleted. They are left on like our YouTube channel. It just gets moved to private video. And then at any point we can move them back into a public video so they're accessible.
So that are available. And the reason I asked that is I said on the cat trail, and we recently run into a problem where a lot of things are being left up, and all of a sudden our system started to fail wouldn't hold the content and started skipping and doing a bunch of other foolish things which only IT people understand. But that's why I'm concerned. It's if it is up with an overload situation, we can start the office with the other current situation where you can go back and get it.
So basically, we just got links, is that right? So that takes up no space on our system, it's just a link to YouTube.
Okay.
One thing I'll just interject here, I'm sure other people want to go in. I thought the original reason for taking them down was because if we leave them up indefinitely, there are accessibility requirements for people who are hearing impaired and perhaps other issues like that, that would require us to spend some money to make those videos accessible. I don't know if that's so or not. Crystal Lee, you may have some information on that.
Yeah, sorry, I know Brian also said that argument to me, but there is built-in caption technology in Facebook, and it's improved since when it was first created. It's done by AI, you don't have to do anything, it's free, it just turns on. It's not always perfect, but also the argument that it's not accessible, taking it down doesn't make it accessible either. It makes it not accessible to everybody, right? And just the caption technology is there. It is what other counties do. They aren't paying people to do it, and they are not finding that they're not in compliance with accessibility. It is the standard. In many people that I've spoken to, I don't know, I can't say everywhere, but that they go online and there's just automatic captions that you can turn on.
So that there's no expense involved in that. Is that an automatic feature on YouTube now? Yeah, and sometimes it's hilarious if people aren't speaking particularly clearly or if they have an accent. You're not sure what they're saying, but it's pretty good. So that would cover any legality issue that we may have in terms of accessibility then?
I believe, because again, I see other municipalities, Two-tier and upper tier and lower tier, that do it that way.
But that would be something to ascertain, I think. So yes, go ahead.
Yeah, and that is a good point. I use YouTube quite a bit, and the automatic captioning is really handy. I actually thought of leaving it up, and it actually allows it to optimize better on Google and on YouTube, because there's words on there. The only thing is that in the time that I've just used it recently for a 4-minute video, I noticed multiple spelling errors, and I was clear and concise in it. I can only imagine when we take a microphone doing this, or a delegate doing that, and I'm just trying to think about how accurate that would be compared to having a clerk taking the official minutes and making an official record. Like I said, I'm not against it. I see the value of it. There's been times when I wanted to go back to an old meeting, not cheaper, so I should have downloaded that. But the idea of keeping it on record, making it available if it's needed, versus leaving it just out there the way it is, I just think it would be a kind of an in-between approach, and then if somebody really wants it, they're more than content to be able to access it. That's just that middle of the road compromise type thing is in my mind, but I get what you're saying.
Okay, I don't want to pursue this too long. I'd say that we should consider this officially. I think we should have a motion on this one.
I would like to motion that we change the bylaw to be that we leave the meetings up indefinitely, and I'd like a recorded vote.
Is it second? When is second? Okay, how do you want to pull the recorded vote?
I'll just do it by alphabetical order, if you just give me a minute to get names in order.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can we just have more discussion?
Well, we've got a motion on the floor and we're taking a recorded vote. Did you want to speak to the motion?
Well, I just wondered if I just quickly typed in and this article popped up that, and literally I just typed it in.
My phone,
An article popped up where there's some concern that I just wonder if it should be run by a legal person, just to see what the ramifications are, because they're talking about how now they can be manipulated. And, so, literally just look at it. So I worry, now I guess maybe a bylaw can be changed if we pass it, but I just worry that should we run this by someone that knows more
that
than
can
we
be part of the motion.
to make sure that we're not doing something we regret later.
Can you
I'm for it.
make that part of the
I just mean,
motion?
I don't wanna do
So the
something.
person calling it can second it first.
Yeah.
Can that be part of the motion, just to make sure that there's no legal limitation?
Sure, if that makes Councilor Milligan more comfortable, if we want to say that we'll do it with an opinion, that to be rendered,
Yeah.
whoever that needs to be.
Yeah.
Randy will put that in better language than I will.
Okay. Satisfied with that? So Randy, whenever you're ready, you can hold the council.
So I'll pull it starting with the mover, ending with the Reeve in alphabetical. So Councillor Woodcock,
Yes.
yes.
Use your mind.
I'm in favor.
Deputy Reeve Davison,
I'm in favor.
Councillor Fenwick,
Microphone, I'm in favor.
Councillor Lalonde,
Yes.
Councillor McDonald,
Yes, I'm in favor.
Councillor Milligan,
Yes, I'm in favor.
and Reeve Wise.
Yes,
It's carried.
that's very, thank you. Yes, Wendy?
So, moving on, I guess.
Well, Randy's gonna continue. That was the last item of her housekeeping changes, but there's something you wanted to speak to in housekeeping?
Yeah,
Okay, go ahead.
I just clarification, Brandy. So section 2.1, you said update the information as it relates to where meeting dates and times are posted. It said posted to website, not civic portal. But I find the meeting dates on the civic portal still. Is that going to change? Like that's where I find them.
Through you, Reeve Wise, so each year we will publish a full listing of the council dates, times, location, and we post that PDF document to the website. And then as the meetings happen or a couple months in advance, we create the meetings in Civic Web Portal.
Okay.
So they show up there as well.
Thank
But it's more of just to be that one central location in case we haven't created a meeting 6-8 months down the road. That wouldn't show up in the Civic Web Portal. The official record would be on the website.
Thank you.
Okay, carry on, Randy.
So just continuing with housekeeping updates. So update layout to ensure format meets accessibility requirements. So just the general layout of the procedural bylaw. We'll include a more comprehensive list of the definitions, and we'll update some of the language throughout and provide more detailed procedures. So looking at some of the procedures currently, there's no details on how to establish a committee. The procedural bylaw talks to committees, but no procedures on how that actually happens. And there's no procedures for closed meetings, so we'll include those as well. So we'll move into some of the recommended changes, and these just stem in reviewing other procedural bylaws from other municipalities, some of the best practices. So we'll add a section on procedures for calling emergency meetings. Currently, the bylaw speaks to special meetings, but we can give a little bit more flexibility for emergency situations. Add a section regarding establishing committees, which I just talked about. Add section that speaks to how petitions are handled by council. So the current procedural bylaw lacks that. Add sections that speak to quorum and 2/3 votes. And add duties of the council, reeve, clerk, and CAO. And those are just pulled from the Municipal Act, but it outlines it clear under the procedural bylaw. Is there any questions on that slide?
Yes, Crystal.
Yeah, I just noticed, I think you accidentally skipped over number 2 about publishing the agenda.
Oh, sorry.
So I do believe that Thursday would be an improvement, because currently we have only one full business day, and that's, I think it was before, not enough time. I originally said I wanted to ask for a week in advance, I also understand that's maybe a little too hard on staff. It might tighten the timeline, I was probably thinking, when you say arrives, they wouldn't be used to no pattern, maybe we could adjust, but I really think the Thursday is an improvement. Do you think it would be too hard on staff if it was by the end of day Wednesday? And, because I think you mentioned, maybe it was 11 a.m. on a Thursday, but is just I would like your take. I don't want to be asking too much, but I think even like one day, that's a great improvement because at least gives us 2 full business days. But depending on the complexity of the issue, sometimes there are people you want to be able to reach out to or have more conversations to feel fully informed, but I'd like to know if that's, I don't want to be too burdensome.
Through you, Reeve Wise, the only consideration I would say for publishing on the Wednesdays, if we come out of a previous council meeting and council is directing staff to bring a report forward, that would really only give staff a couple day turnaround to prepare a report. I mean, generally speaking, sometimes that happens just based on dates, and a day may not seem much of an impact, but sometimes it can be. Currently, our delegations also have until Wednesday noon to get in their delegation requests. Sometimes we use our discretion to allow them to submit their material kind of at the end of the day, Wednesday, so we can get it on the agenda so council has it. So there's just those types of considerations. If you move that timeline, you have to also move other timelines as well.
Go ahead.
So I'm open to hearing from anybody else, anyone has some thoughts. I'm also, I don't want to ask too much, and I think even the Thursday, and if that goes well, then maybe we can look later on at moving it. I think that's an improvement. I really appreciate that being a suggestion.
Anyone else? Rob?
Yeah, I certainly agree when it comes to, certainly it'd be nice to have it earlier. I know it's difficult, like you mentioned. One of the things that concerns me is we're gonna end up potentially having more and more delegates. If we get too early, we end up having more delegates showing up. It surprises with documents that we have not seen. How do you prepare for something that shows up in front of you right now?
Yeah.
And then you end up having votes and discussions with something you're not educated about at all. So if we're going to move the back of it, which certainly would benefit, there's a lot more time to research. And as you mentioned, speaking to staff about things, clarifying things. But if we're going to do that, then we also need to specify, I guess, that any delegation needs to provide its paperwork in advance. Anything they're going to bring and put forward to a point, but that's also going to hurt those that just want to speak. It's such a fine line there.
Wendy?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I mean, what happened at our public meeting, getting all those documents and was kind of challenging, and that's happened before numerous times. I think the best way to address that is to maybe is just ask the delegates to submit to council their documents prior to the meeting. And but if it doesn't prevent other people from coming and doing that little mini 3-minute presentation, you know, if they really want to talk, but they don't have, you know, they haven't got time to prepare, they can do that 3-minute presentation without having to feel that they're missing out on something.
Chrisley?
For me, I think, again, I'm not into putting up, like, I think if more time means more delegates, that is better for democracy. I consider that a strength of democracy. It may be uncomfortable, people show up with papers and we don't feel fully prepared, but we don't ever have to render a decision that evening. We can always wait until another meeting. I think we need more. We need more people coming to council. We need more people being prepared. And if we're gonna say staff deserves to have time to be prepared, and they're on payroll, and that's their job. We have the citizens who are coming forward, using their time to get engaged and involved, and are we gonna now expect them to have a report in by Friday for us for Monday? Because they may be working on that on the weekend, like it just comes up, they're not prepared in advance, they see the agenda, they've got to do their research too, they've got to figure out what they're gonna say. You know, so I think we can't put that kind of demand on the public. I think, again, it might be a roadblock to participation. And although I don't like getting documents, I'm like, I'm not ready for this, I still think that that's okay. I might not feel comfortable, but again, I don't have to render a decision. I can always wait till next time. I don't think that we need to formally submit something in advance. Just, I think that might prevent engagement, and I want to increase engagement.
Okay, anyone else? I think the main point there is we don't have to make a decision on the delegation, and we usually don't. We usually receive information, we question them, we may challenge something they've said, but if they brought documents at the last minute, it's kind of their problem that what they submitted doesn't get addressed. We can receive it, take it into consideration when the issue actually comes to council for a decision, if it requires a decision. So I agree with you that we don't need to demand documents ahead of time. We can encourage.
Yeah.
And we think if someone was
Yeah.
serious about the presentation, they want to have as much stuff in advance in people's heads on council as possible. Yes, Robert?
And that's, you make a good point, John, I do agree with you. We don't, and I agree with you too, Councilor Doc, we don't want to, no one wants to get in the way of when we see people here, that's what we want, because we want them to understand what we do and why we do it. But what I get worried about when I see that sort of thing is when they do demand, like we saw in the public meeting we just had, where they want a vote, they want something to happen, we haven't had a chance to review anything in front of you. And all we need is for a moment of I don't know, giving in, and we may do something that after we read the documents that night or the next day, and we realize, what did we just do? So also, I like to ask questions of these people, the delegates, because that's the whole point. But if they're completely immersed and knowledgeable what they presented, and I have 30 seconds to review it, I don't, democracy, absolutely. It's a back and forth thing. I can't ask what I need to ask because I don't even know what I just read. So I don't know what it is. As John said, get your point. We need strong information for them. And that needs to be, I don't know how it is, maybe when they, I'm assuming it's you, Brandy, that puts this on the agenda, that builds the agenda. When people reach out, maybe a quick automatic response to them saying, if you plan on bringing anything, we strongly recommend you present it so that council can interact with you properly. That is democracy, right? But that's where I'm concerned about, not that I expect anybody to have to do it, you know?
Okay, anyone else in this point? Randy?
Yeah, through you, Revise, I'll just speak to that a bit. Typically, when we get a delegation request or any presentations requested for council, we do strongly encourage to send it early so we can get it to council. And we just use the language that it's so council can educate themselves on what you're presenting, and so they have a heads up and can make an informed decision. So we do typically have that conversation with delegations.
Okay, good. All right, Doug?
Yeah, currently the agendas are published on Friday at noon roughly. Would it be that big an issue to tender it end of day Thursday? Because there are times, I know I've run into times where you want to talk to somebody and on Monday they're not available. It'd be nice if you could get them on Friday morning when you read it. And I'd be supportive of it Thursday if it's not an onerous situation.
Yeah, through you, Revise. I'm used to publishing agendas Thursdays prior to a meeting, and I strive to provide that kind of at a minimum. So it's no concern for me on my end.
And that's in fact what we proposed here this Thursday. Yeah, okay. Move on then.
Okay, we'll move to the next slide. Section 3.2, allow more flexibility where a meeting date falls on a holiday. Current practice is to move the meeting to the following day. That is not a holiday. However, the next day can sometimes be conflicting due to weather or quorum issues. So we would just change the language in that to the following day where council can commence together. Section 3.5, statutory meetings. So current procedural bylaw is that statutory meetings are held as a separate meeting entirely from council. So this results in extra meeting dates for council, extra agenda preparing, minute preparing. So what we're proposing is that it just be a standing item on a council agenda. And then if there is a public meeting, you would do your procedures within the first couple of minutes, calling the meeting to order, declarations of pecuniary interest, and then move into your public meeting. And that would just be a standing item on the council agenda. 9.3, include procedures, requirements for virtual participation for delegations and staff. This section is lacking in terms of if there's connectivity issues, how do we handle that? Is it expected that staff can present from home on an item? So just cleaning that up and providing a bit more structure to that. Section 11, this is under, so for reconsideration of a previous council decision. So the current language speaks to prevailing sides. However, when taking votes, if there's no recorded vote, we don't know what a prevailing side is. So just updating the language on that item to make it a bit more clearer on how we handle reconsiderations of a decision.
And how would you do that?
So we can, I have language here, I'll just pull it up. Okay, so we can include parameters that require the support of the majority of council. It wouldn't be amendable and it would be debatable. So just providing a bit more structure around it. The current way it's written reads that only a member who voted on the prevailing side of an original decision may bring forward a motion for reconsideration. So sometimes further information can come forward, which can change someone's opinion about something. So it would allow more flexibility within that and not be so restrictive.
So basically, any council member could ask for revisitation to a previous decision. I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, and it removes the language of having to know who voted on the prevailing side, because you wouldn't know that if you didn't take a recorded vote.
Wendell, go ahead, Wendell.
I'm just gonna pick Rob's and Deputy Reeve Davidson's brain for a minute. And Sherry, were you on the procedural bylaw review? No. I thought we had decided that all votes were gonna be recorded on every motion.
Not that I recall.
Because when we come to this, that would have been a problem when we came to that section 11, was not knowing who voted.
When every vote being recorded,
My
we slowed down the meeting so bad that we never get it accomplished. No, I
Okay,
don't remember it that way.
I think we discussed it, I just wasn't sure what our decision was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what our decision.
I do recall what was discussed. I don't think it was that specific. If I recall correctly, there was discussion about when there was a vote that everybody had to show their hands. I know that John in particular is only supposed to be a tiebreaker, but it was one of those things that we discussed. Everybody just needs to show their vote in or out. And then that way it wasn't something where in a public session, when people are wondering what your brain is at, no one person, any one person here doesn't have to reveal that. But it was not adopted, if I recall. I think Brian was not interested in that, and we decided not to do it.
In any case, this proposed revision will eliminate any confusion there. Carry on, Brandon. Oh, sorry, Chris, did you have something?
Are you still on this slide, or are you ready to go to the next slide? Is this time to discuss what's on this, or are we still making our way to the points?
We're still making our way through. The recommendation 13.2 is supposed to be A, recommending removal of that one, is that right, Brandy?
Yes, so 13.2 I, visitors not recognized as a delegation at a meeting may be recognized by the chair to provide comment or suggestions on the matter being considered for a single time only, and any further requests for comment or suggestion shall be required recognition by the chair. So the reason why I was recommending removal of that item is that at what point do you limit members in the audience to speaking? If you select one on an ad hoc basis, there may be the expectation from everyone in the audience to be able to get up and speak, and that can just drag out a meeting where council is there to be making decisions on matters. It's kind of best practice, my opinion, that if they want to talk to something, they can sign up as a delegation prior, or they can address council at the beginning of council under a 3-minute delegation, or they can sign up to the next meeting to speak to the item that they wanted to speak to on an ad hoc basis.
Any discussion? Yes, Linda.
So I guess the question is the term or the definition of the word visitor. I guess I had thought that it would be if we had, a visitor from, our auditor would be a quote unquote visitor, or a consultant with Blue Earth would be a visitor. That's how I was interpreting that, that they would be allowed to respond to questions and whatever. But maybe that's not the intention of this council. That's how I interpret that word.
If anyone, any such person was here, it would be in the context of being part of the meeting, and they would be consulted or offer an opinion in any case. I always interpret that as basically a member of the public.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So going back, I remember we had a heated full house at one point, and we had agreed to accept 2 representatives. I think, I can't remember their names, I won't get into that. But they were sort of assigned as being, if you will, the authorized visitors too. And they were the only ones who could speak to the issue. And, other members in the audience that were confused by that and did actually stand up and call us terrible names. It was a heated meeting. And the chair said, I think it was you, Wise, who had said there are only 2 authorized people who are able to speak from the public on these issues. And
Yeah,
so
it was a hard situation, and those spokespeople had actually given a presentation. That was it. They were a delegation,
Oh, okay.
so they already were kind of part of the meeting agenda in any case.
Got it.
I think this is a good idea. There are plenty of opportunities for people to address an issue. I mean, if there was something of great urgency that council was simply unaware of on an issue and someone had an impassioned request to speak, I'm sure we would grant it. If it's simply someone wants to get involved in the debate because they've got an opinion, sorry, you can be a 3-minute delegation. You can previously register to be a delegate. You can speak to councilors after a vote, and it can be revisited at a future meeting. If we start encouraging or engaging with an audience, and that sort of gets to be a standard practice, your meetings are just going to be chaotic. That's my opinion.
This is sort of a procedural.
I think that's why we have a procedural bylaw, and it's not just an open forum. Okay, carry on then, Brandon. Oh, sorry, go ahead,
Okay,
Chris.
so go back to 9.3, include procedures requirement for virtual participation for delegations and staff. I know that That was one of the changes made last year, I believe, and I know, but I see it in here as 12.3. I'll just read 12.3 3 out. The CEO/clerk, that will be obviously changed, shall accommodate members of council who formally request to participate in the council meetings via electronic means when the meeting is open to the public. Members may be present via telephone, video or audio conferencing or other interactive method for the meeting, but will not be granted voting rights at these meetings. Members will not be granted the opportunity to participate in closed session for privacy and security reasons. I would like to see us be able to participate remotely and vote, not regularly, but say up to a maximum of 2 meetings a year. In that, people could be away for cars travel, like, I don't think it should become the standard when you do things, but I think if we said maximum 2 a year, that could allow a little flexibility, that you could still participate in the meeting. I'm open to other people's takes on that, but I do think that is something in a modern time that we could offer. And I also don't necessarily agree that you can't sit in on a closed session, in that, like, we are in a closed session generally, and you're still trusted to secure the outlet to respect the privacy of what goes on. So if you can be trusted in that context, can't you be trusted to be in a private location in which to hear a closed meeting? And again, I'm not saying this as something that we should make a standard practice, but sometimes there are circumstances that arise, and do we want to limit the way in which council can participate on the issues? Again, not to make these standards, but is there any room for any flexibility on these kind of items? What do people think?
Any discussion on this one? Yes, Rob?
That's an interesting concept. I don't see any problem with it. The first thing I think of is, why is that in place? So what is the reason that it is currently disallowed or discouraged? I know Doug attended a meeting. We had a joy of looking at him on the screen, if you recall correctly, with the laptop, and we had sound issues. Do you remember that, Doug?
Mhm.
And Doug was unable to vote. And I remember at the time thinking to myself, he is participating, he is here.
Mhm.
Why is he not able to vote? The only thing I'm thinking is that in the public, not really being able to interact with him directly as you would in a normal sense, that maybe that was the limitation, that he's physically not present to deal with all of the different things that make, physical presence what it is. But is that enough to really make that difference? We are in a different world now.
Mhm.
And your other point about the closed session, it's very interesting that you put that forward. If you do think about it, we lock the doors here, everybody check in, make sure no one around, but we're trusted with that information when we leave here. What's the difference that we'll be trusted with when we leave, and we're going to share it versus when we consume it? I think you've got a very interesting point. I'm in favor of looking at this. I would like to hear more discussion if we can.
Linda?
I'm in favor as well. I've always felt that way. Thank you for bringing it up.
Anyone else?
Revise.
Yes, go ahead.
Through you, Revise, I'll just speak to that. Under the Municipal Act, it stipulated that council participation via electronic means wasn't permitted at some point in time. That was changed after COVID because everyone moved to electronic meetings. So I feel like it probably just wasn't reflected in the procedural bylaw that I have access to. So we can certainly look at including that, and that's when you just put the parameters about verifying that you're in a private room or in a secure location. Everyone has to show their hand or say yes during a vote. Those are the types of things that we can do to make sure that everything's okay with it.
And I think it's worth looking at some other policies other municipalities have. I mean, at the county level, we've had plenty of virtual meetings. It's usually one or the other. It's the hybrid one that's really the issue. I mean, we've done both closed and open meetings and had votes and so on many times. We did it here too. But are there any issues with the hybrid ones which we aren't thinking of? So you can bring that back to us. That would be helpful. Yes.
And just also, sorry, just see a 9.3, and that could also, I see staff is also listed, so the possibility, again, it doesn't mean we make it a regular, but that if there's a number per year, that means life is unpredictable. That maybe that would be something to include as well.
And And to that point, that's right. I'm thinking about the home work balance for staff, which we've seen a lot of, right? We're trying to promote that. Well, that's forward thinking. There's no need for a staff member to stay around here for sometimes 2, 3, 4 hours after for 15 minutes question they may have when they could be doing other things. And it would make it more of a place that people want to be part of, right? So excellent point.
Yeah, I agree. Okay.
Okay.
Yes, Sonia?
So would a secure location at a hunting lodge be like the outhouse?
Well, you have to define secure location. Yeah, that's right. It means that no one else can hear you, and that electronically you're secure as well, that no one else has access to your electronic communication and so on and so forth. So it has to be fairly clear, certainly for closed meetings.
Yeah.
Carry on, Brandon.
Okay, so we touched on the first point, that was duplication in there. So next point, so adding a cap on the number of delegations/presentations permitted for each meeting, recommending that 3 delegations be permitted with 15 minutes each for each delegation. However, the chair can waive this requirement should the topic be deemed time sensitive. And then the last point on that slide, consider option to include committee of the whole within a regular council meeting or schedule on an as-needed basis. Committee of the whole is made up of all members of council to discuss items where a change in policy is being proposed, where there are multiple options, or where the item is of significance to the community. So it can be a standing agenda item, or we can schedule it as a separate meeting. You can schedule it on a separate day from council. We can look at scheduling it prior to a regular session, like at 5. We can include it as a standing item on an agenda. Other municipalities do that, where you go through your order of business, staff reports, bylaws, etc. Then you make a motion to go into committee of the whole, and then you have this more free discussion like we're having tonight. Then you make an adjournment from the committee of the whole, go back into your regular agenda, followed by your confirmatory bylaw or any other procedures after that. So that's really at council discretion.
Okay, anyone want to speak to that? So I guess my thought was that we have committee of the whole because it requires a fuller discussion than other issues, and that's why we're having it separate from a regular council meeting. I'm just not clear on if we wanted to go into committee of the whole during a regular council meeting, what would be the difference between it's just a regular council meeting, we're talking about an issue? What is the implication of going into committee of the whole during the regular council meeting?
So it can allow for a more lengthy conversation and getting into the details of a policy, whereas in a regular council meeting, like for example, a staff report, you wouldn't sit there and disseminate the whole staff report. You would probably ask staff to bring back a more detailed report or provide direction. You wouldn't get into the weeds of going back and forth, discussing it in length and detail than you would in a committee of the whole.
Okay, so it would be an option if it was felt necessary to get that kind of detail during a regular council meeting. I just don't see why you would have to be I'm not sure what the procedure would be, to go out of regular council and into committee of the whole during a Monday night meeting, for example.
Yeah, so through revise, you would schedule separate items from the staff, from the regular council meeting. So you wouldn't have a staff report under your regular session and then move it into committee of the whole to discuss. You would, the recommendation would already be there of what staff were looking for. If there was something that staff were looking for direction on or more detail from council of what they wanted, that item would be in committee of the whole, and there should be a staff report accompanied with it.
Okay.
Does that provide clarification?
Yeah, that's clear. Thank you.
There's a legal definition for that. It's called void or
Barter, yeah,
Or here, yeah,
Yeah.
it's similar to that, it's a non-travel within travel.
I guess so, yeah.
Would be anytime.
Okay, carry on.
Sorry, my apologies. Did we touch on 3.5 statutory meetings having as a standing item?
Yes. we-
Yeah, okay. So 9.4, we kind of jumped ahead. That's okay, because the 9.3 talks specifically, I should have grouped those together, talks specifically about staff. 9.4 speaks to council doing virtual participation, so we can include that in the new procedural bylaw with parameters. Section 10, add section that speaks to notice of motion, direct motion, which outline procedures. So under the current format of the agenda, there is a section, new business arising from members. So this is kind of a mix of direct motions coming out due to delegations. This is condolences. This is thanks to community members, acknowledgements, that types of thing. So what I'm looking at is separating those to do a notice of motion / direct motion section where council members can bring forward a direct motion or a notice of a motion. And then under a separate section, being like a member's privilege where you can give your comments to the community, your thanks to staff, your thanks to community members, those types of things. There's no action coming out of it. And then the actionable items that council wants under a separate section. So they're two distinct items. So I can speak to notice of motion and direct motion. So a notice of motion would be that council provides that they're gearing up to provide some sort of notice of motion at a future council meeting. A direct motion would typically be time-sensitive items where they want it addressed sooner rather than later. I've seen in other municipalities where a direct motion, you require 2/3 of a vote from council. And the purpose to put parameters on that is to provide as much notice to the public and council to prepare for such a motion in advance. But if it's a time-sensitive thing, like applying for a grant that closes or providing a letter of support to another government agency due to something being tabled at their level, that could be a more time-sensitive issue and could go under a direct motion.
Not an also, it's direct motion. Sometimes I'm trying to build up the courage the whole time when we get to new business. Direct motion, that might intimidate me. I might feel like, I don't know, I'm too scared. But it makes a lot more sense and it definitely adds that clarity to motion plus then the announcement, whichever you're gonna call that. I think that makes a lot of sense. And it's clear.
Okay. Linda?
Yeah, I really like this. Thanks very much for bringing that forward because it's happened to me a couple of times in the last. It's taken me the whole meeting to realize that we should have made a motion back then. So
Okay.
that's good.
Carry on.
So 3-minute delegations, we've touched on this briefly. It's not included in the current procedural bylaw. In looking at past minutes, it appears that it was supported by a council resolution during COVID times to permit a 3-minute delegation. They could come in or notify the clerk, I believe by noon, the day of the meeting, to speak to council that evening for 3 minutes. So we can include that and we'll put it in the procedural bylaw so it's very clear. We can allot a certain time, so 15 minutes, and we can even be as flexible of not requiring you to sign up with the clerk, but just come in and sign in and you'll do 15 minute, up to 15 minutes for 3-minute delegations. And in my experience, I've never had an amount of delegations under 3 minutes where it's tallied up to 15 minutes. So council can be
Right.
flexible on that or choose to keep it to pre-registering.
Okay.
So I think, Brandy, the reason it was staff actually who suggested that the reason they didn't want people walking in that night and signing up was some of the questions that were being considered, staff, if they have that half day to look at it, then they would come prepared to have a suitable answer. And that was the reason that we were making the cutoff at noon, Monday noon. And I still think that's a good idea, that it does give staff that, just that extra couple of
Absolutely.
hours to consider what that might look like and what the response might be or direction to us as a council.
Anyone else, Crystal?
I appreciate that and I can see the like value in it, but I kind of, once you suggested that you could come in, I'm like, that sounds great to me. Because again, now people can have an additional day on the Thursday, so that's great to be able to respond, or more likely to respond to a little more notice of what's on the agenda. But I do like the more casual, what I'd say like open door nature, to say, come on in and tell us what you're thinking. Maybe you only found at the end of the day what's on the agenda, because sometimes you only find at last minute what's on the agenda and then you're racing here, and maybe that's okay, that we aren't, again, that we aren't fully prepared. I'm okay with being uncomfortable and feeling like I don't know the answer, even though sometimes I might put my foot in my mouth, but I like the open door nature of the sign up. Happy to hear their thoughts.
Anyone else? I agree, actually. If staff isn't prepared, well, that's too bad for the person who's doing a 3-minute delegation. They won't get an answer that night. But they've got their issue in front of council, and council can say, okay, we received your delegation, and we can ask staff to bring a report back to a future meeting. Yeah, I like the sort of open door nature of it myself. Any other opinion? Sure.
Maybe my brain's just working weird tonight, but is there ever a chance that someone shows up with some idea that, and I mean, it's gonna be broadcast right then, and they get up and say something that's totally,
Wacko.
okay, I'm trying to think of a better word. Because then it's done, we have no way to stop it, and maybe that's okay, I don't know. We have no clue what they're gonna say.
Crystal?
Just to respond to that, but someone could sign up and say they're gonna say something. If they wanna say what they wanna say, and we might not like it, they could say it anyway, right? Whether or not they've signed it by noon or not. Just my opinion.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. Rob?
Yeah, it's interesting to hear everybody, and I can see it from every side, and I certainly appreciate Councilor Lamont saying, it's nice to be prepared, because then at least there's a fighting chance that the person who has the question gets an answer that night, at least partially, so we can move forward and have progress rather than confusion. On the other hand, John makes a very good point. As long as staff is prepared, and we should probably communicate with staff about any of these changes to the procedural bylaw, that if you are 3-minute delegation comes up and they ask you questions, please feel free to say, I do not have the answer that way with me now. I'll make a note of it and get back to you at a future time. Kind of does take care of it, I guess. Because I guess it's when they feel they need to be able to shoot from the hip and they think that that's their responsibility, that's where the stress comes from. As long as we communicate with them and let them know that that is not expected of them, that if they have the answer, wonderful, but they do not, feel free to say so. It's just proper communication, and I think that's fine too. It's interesting, we both have very valid points. It's so difficult to make a decision between the two, but I guess that's my 2 cents.
And the other thing is, it's extremely unlikely that if we allow a 3-minute delegation at the very last minute, so to speak, that we're going to get a whole lot of disruption all of a sudden. And if we do, then we discontinue the practice. It's really that simple. So, yeah,
That's what I was gonna say, you try any method, if it don't work, you can change it.
Yeah.
It's not written in stone.
so do we have consensus? We can have last minute delegations of 3 minutes for that 15-minute period?
3 replies, I'll just also note on there that I did make notes, these are just ideas for council's consideration. But you could stipulate that they can only speak to items that are on the agenda. you could stipulate that obviously you can only come with it, what's in council's jurisdiction to actually handle. And that the only outcome from their 3-minute delegation would be kind of the bare minimum, a staff report would be requested.
That's good. Yeah, I like that. Address items that are on. Sounds good. Okay.
Just for the record, I wasn't the one who asked for the 3-minute delegation to be in by noon.
Oh.
That came from someone else, and it just became sort of practice, so it wasn't mine. I was just sharing what I knew to be the case.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Randy.
Okay, so moving ahead, so we've touched on add public meeting as a standing item. I'm suggesting that we remove actions taken. I'm not sure the intent of this section or what's historically gone in that section. I haven't seen anything that's been provided under the agenda under that item. So I'm not sure the intent. And then add presentations and delegations together as one standing item.
I think the actions taken item was just to let council and the public know what the progress was on some ongoing issue. At the Conservation Authority, do they still do that with the agenda? When I was there, we started doing that. There were usually 3 or 4 points, and the general manager would say, on the issue of such and such, I've been in touch with so-and-so, just to keep you posted. I don't have a report yet. It was kind of a base touching exercise. So, we can keep early, but we haven't been doing it.
I don't hear that.
Yeah. So that's why I was there. I'm just wanting the reasons. So
Okay.
if we're not using it, then we don't need to.
Okay, we can always leave it for the time being, and maybe new staffing coming in, they may want to look at that and have that as a consideration.
So for example, then if it just occurs to a counselor during a meeting, gee, I wonder what's happening with such and such. I mean, you should be getting that on the agenda before the meeting, but if it seems important, then you remind of it. Would you do that in one of the like what we call now new business arising from members, that kind of thing? That's the place for that. If you want an update, you get it at that point. Okay, fine, that's good.
Okay, so moving through the agenda template. So proposing that we add a consent agenda as a standing item on the agenda. So what a consent agenda does is allows council to receive items for information in one sweeping motion. So you can include bylaws that were previously recognized in a staff report. You can include items for information received by the community about upcoming events, resolutions circulated from other municipalities. So they would all be listed as individual items under the consent agenda with their attachments, their correspondence, of course, and then it would just be one motion to receive all of the items. If council wished to pull a specific item, so if it's something you wanted to comment on or support or do something further with, we can then pull that item and council can either further receive it for information or make a motion to take action on it. So it just expedites the process for going through some of those items that don't require direction.
We used to do that at the Board of Health, which receives a lot of information submissions. And yeah, you just have one motion, approve the consent agenda, want to pull one in, fine, it saves time.
So we touched on this, change new business arising from members to notice of motion, direct motion. Then we'll add another item, we can call it members privilege or something else, and this will be the opportunity for members of council to make comments, that kind of thing. Looking at the staff report structure on the agenda, right now it's by like position, and it has, I've changed it a bit, but it was associated with staff member names, just recommending that it either be like by a department or by like CAO office, clerk office, planning and building, and then the staff reports underneath. Or you could even just have staff reports and then all of the staff reports, and it's not even broken down by department or staff member. So that's at council's discretion, how you want that laid out. That's really up to you.
Any problem with that? That sounds fine.
So currently under the procedural bylaw, it states that for the procedures going into close, that the regular session adjourns. But you need to report, you need to make a motion in a regular session to move into closed session, and then you have to rise and report in regular session from your closed session. So it really should be under housekeeping, but it'll just be a reference that you're going into close. So we'll just be updating the agenda template to include that. And then for closed session, the agenda template, there is an agenda template on the procedural bylaw, and it's lacking the adoption of previous minutes, I believe. So we'll just add that in. Yeah, it doesn't have approval of previous closed minutes, so we'll just add that item in. And that's it.
Yes, go ahead, Rob.
One little thing.
Yep.
So I did attend a section at Food Roads Conference last year, and I went to the mic, and it was specifically for new counselors. And I asked the name of the person that brought up the term in camera, because I wanted to have an in-depth talk with him. And it was very interesting, and the gentleman who was elected in 1975 is still serving on council, so he's been on council every year, been alive, God bless him. And he said, you just changed it in your procedure bylaw. Get rid of that confusing term. We've done it before. It can go away. And I said, we just finished up a procedural bylaw committee 3 days ago before I came here. They were all laughing. So I know it's a traditional term. I know what it means. I know what it ties to, but for the average person, it doesn't make sense.
No.
We turn the cameras off and then we go in camera. Will we actually get inside the camera? Like, it doesn't make sense. If there's a way that we can just omit that from our language so that we don't confuse the public, I think that would be wise.
I agree.
Yes, Chris Lee.
I just fully support that. I mean, it just seems clearer to people who aren't in this world.
I'm all for tradition. I'm a traditional person, but when it's confusing and when it's outdated, it is time to move on. That's all there is to it, especially when you get some way of progress.
That's fine. I took Latin for 5 years. I know in camera means in a room. It doesn't have anything to do with pictures, but most people know that.
That's right, your worship.
These are not properly educated, in my opinion. Oh, Latin. Okay, that's excellent work, Andy. Chris, you have something else?
Yeah, sorry, one more point, just going back to virtual participation, I know I referenced 2 maximum. I think for council members that makes sense, but I would see more flexibility from staff and members to be different, thinking of what Rob's saying, kind of the modernization of workplace, that flexibility and respect for work-life balance. I think I would see it at a higher number for staff, but for us as elected officials, it's quite incumbent that we be here as much as we can, but I think maximum 2 for councilors. That number for staff, I would go up. I'm happy to let you come up with something and see what we say or hear from anybody else, and that's what I think.
Okay, thank you. Anything further? Anything else you need, Brandon?
Through you, Reprise, I don't require anything further unless there's anything in the procedural bylaw that council wants to touch on that maybe I missed or that you think is important. It's your document to govern your meetings, but we can always amend it at a later date if something's not working, so.
Yeah. We're flexible. Okay, if there's nothing further, that's good. I don't know, Chrisley, I think.
I'm so sorry. I meant to do this. I also just really want to say thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Brandon, for putting this together. I think it's been very valuable, and I think we've made some real changes that people are going to be very happy about. And in terms of the video online, like that's something that I wanted to do when I was elected, and so I thank you for seconding that, because once I said it, Linda, I was like, oh no, this could fall on my face here. So thank you for seconding, and thank you everybody else for supporting it, because I really believe in that, and I think it's better for our community.
Thank you. So I entertain a motion to adjourn then? Everybody, take your pick. Maybe that's not proper procedure.
Talking about procedural bylaws.
You can put down Sherry and Rob. or
Sherry, Rob.
Chrisley and Wayne.
Sherry and Rob.
Sherry and Rob. Okay, thanks, everybody. I'm gonna go and see if those kids cut these swears right.
Oh, dear.
Oh, yeah.